We've got a situation that's happening throughout the United States. Lucas, I had a chance to check this post, which had this really cool animation showing how much air traffic there was at the beginning. And then as this software update rolled out, all US air traffic ended up being grounded. And the result of this is just chaos at the airports. You've got all the terminals have these very weird displays where they're showing this special Windows screen like this, where it says, there's a problem and you need to restart your computer. All of this apparently has been caused by an update that was pushed by a security company called Crowdstrike. What they do is they make a security monitoring software, and the security monitoring software runs at the lowest level of the operating system. So when this update got pushed, there is a problem with the driver, the kernel driver that is being used, and the only way to fix it is to go into safe mode, reboot the machine, delete the errant file, and then boot it back up again. And this is apparently just causing chaos across the entire planet of everywhere they're running Windows. So this is big news in the world of computer software. And having been in this space for a tremendous amount of time, oh man, we had to at least mention it. And you said a friend of yours has actually talked to you about this.
Well, I'm glad. I wanted to pick your brain on what you thought about this as somebody who is in network security. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had a message from a friend in Italy. And if we had the a map of the flights in Europe, we would see the same going on in Europe because all of their aviation traffic has been stalled out there. Um, and he messaged me and said, "This is a state operation. CrowdStrike is down. Keep an eye out for what's going on with regards to that." So, but that's all he messaged me, and I hadn't had a chance to dig into even what CrowdStrike was. I'm unfamiliar with it. I use Linux and Mac systems, which are unaffected. I haven't used Windows much. I'm actually a little bit shocked that yeah, I wonder whenever we think about especially like aviation transportation companies, why they're not using sort of their own brand of Linux, or why they're relying on Microsoft Word, or not Microsoft Word, Microsoft Windows.
Well, where they're using Microsoft Windows is in a lot of the touchscreen stuff. So if you have a touchscreen, it's probably running Windows. Now there's some that run Android or Android variants because it's just that was the penetration that's who got a toehold on providing that particular pieces of software. So there's these big displays in the check-in software and some of the very front
I
end
can't
stuff
hear you guys anymore.
and some of the very front end stuff that gets run on Windows. So that's how Windows has gotten a toehold. But there's a lot of the aviation software is actually running really really old software. So they're running stuff that was pre-Windows. I don't know if you've ever watched the ticket terminal person that's doing the ticketing, which seems to be unaffected, but they use these really arcane old systems that are probably written in like COBOL or Fortran or something super super old, and they never update that software, or at least rarely.
Um,
Is it?
you know, Ron, can you hear us?
I just muted his mic. We'll bring Ron back in a minute. So we'll try and sort his audio.
Okay. Well, and I did I did know as I had a stint in my lifetime whenever, and it was when I was in Durango, Rusty. Whenever I was flying with American quite a bit because I was a designated travel partner of somebody who worked for American. So I did fly a lot, and I did get a little bit familiar with some of their systems. And I was aware that they were using some very archaic systems with their ticketing, but both because it worked and because it was more secure than something that had been built that was newer. Um, so ticketing unaffected, but the touch screens are what infected with CrowdStrike. I mean, it also seems CrowdStrike is affecting more than just aviation and travel.
For sure, it's anything that that they're doing business with. Like CrowdStrike is this isn't like a malware piece of software necessarily. I mean, I don't know particularly how this piece of code ended up being bad. Like maybe I can zoom in on this and show exactly what this guy said is happening here. But it's this particular little piece of software that got pushed, and this is showing where it did a bad thing. See, it says destruction, memory could not be read, blah blah blah, through an exception. That's all some software hacker gobbledygook, but essentially what it says is a piece of a file, like a kernel driver that is used by CrowdStrike. They pushed out a new one, and that one had a problem with it. So essentially, it's like a bad Windows update, but the Windows update only happens if you're working with CrowdStrike, right? So it's not Microsoft that did this. It's not a Trojan. It's not a worm. It's not anything like that. What happened is routinely what will happen is CrowdStrike will push out new software to help, tech for malware and, security intrusions on the machines that are being monitored and protected. And the latest one that they pushed out had an issue with it. It had an error in it.
So
But
if
yeah, it goes well beyond aviation. Well beyond aviation.
well, and to what it might also be affecting, there's any number. I mean, a lot of businesses run on Windows machines. A lot of state departments, bureaucracies run on Windows machines. My friend who DM'd me early in the morning always has an eye on military intelligence and statecraft. Maybe we should even say secret statecraft, etc. And he seemed to think um, this was per, per, perpetrated by some sort of state or actor, or an actor who was interested in interfering with the world at this particular moment.
Well, this is what CrowdStrike does. So just simply from their own site, why CrowdStrike protects people, processes, and technologies that drive modern enterprise, single agent solution to stop breaches, ransomware, and cyber attacks. That's what this is supposed to do. So this is like an opt-in. I don't know if you remember John McAfee and antivirus and Norton antivirus and all that kind of stuff. That's what this is essentially for. It's to try to eliminate threats that might happen to your system, and stop them before they actually become an issue, or allow you to detect them if they're on your system, so you can do isolation of whatever systems. And this software, because it runs at such a low level, if there is an issue with it, it can brick the device until you remediate the issue. And this one requires manual intervention. So this guy was kind of talking about what it takes to do it. You have to go into fail mode and have that driver removed. Like it's a pretty big deal, like, to get this off your machine. Like, it's not easy to do it, and it means that there's going to be quite a bit of friction getting this problem remediated.
Um, Interesting. And so it's basically an antivirus program that is
Kind of. I'm simplifying it. I don't want to like downplay what CrowdStrike does. Their scope is bigger than just antivirus. It's threat detection and a bunch of other stuff. So it's more than just that. But I'm helping you kind of frame it up and what you might have had experience with. So it's kind of like that stuff. But it's more. It's more than that. It's bigger than that.
well, McAfee always raises my eyebrows because of who John McAfee was and some of the claims that he made and the way that he disappeared. So that's always interesting. Even just getting into network security, I always clutch my pearls because of the I don't know, intense interest by state actors, North Korea, Iran, the United States, three-letter agencies, and so I'm never sure what's going on there. In my life, I try to keep as little of value on a computer as possible whatsoever. But some of the reporting that I saw, some of it spoke about falconware. Are you familiar of that sort of aspect of the of CrowdStrike? Because it seemed like that was some sort of was the driver geared towards some sort of analysis done by an AI, and that was called falconware? Is that what was going on there?
Yeah, I think it's related to Falcon in some way. I'm not intimately familiar with CrowdStrike software personally. I don't use it. I don't run it. So I can't comment on more than just I know roughly the space they play in. I know how these things typically work, and I know what sort of access is required. And from reading on other people talking about it, I know what they're saying. Like essentially, what this guy is saying here about how this driver is causing an issue. I mean, this looks like garbage to most people, but I'm used to seeing this kind of interface. So I know what's happening here, but I don't know what Falcon does particularly.
Hmm. Well, and on a state level, I don't know if you saw that Tel Aviv had a strike that penetrated their Iron Dome yesterday, probably possibly from Iran. And not only that, but one of the Yemeni generals declared that Tel Aviv was no longer a safe space. Um, and we had we had the end of the Republican National Committee, or the National convention.
Convention. Yeah.
Yes, convention. The unconventional convention yesterday, in the wake of an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. So seems like there's some heightened tension in the world these days, as if
Yeah,
there was.
which we gotta play that clip. Can we play that clip? Is that all right? I mean, it was
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which clip you're speaking of. The one where he talks about Bukele.
no,
Uh,
no. All right, here I'll get it queued up. I mean, there's the one that's like the most like shocking clip of all time. Like here I'll let me get it on.
I listened to Donald Trump's speech yesterday, but I don't. Okay, go for it.
Keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody. To the nation's 50 million crypto holders, I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency. I will ensure that the future.
That clip.
Clip.
I saw it. Go ahead, Grant. You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I just turned off the cancellation. Anytime I want to play a clip, I got to mess around with my audio settings. I mean, it's just like Elizabeth Warren and her goons, self custody to the 50 million crypto holders with your vote. I'll never create a central bank digital currency. In 15 to 30 seconds, he said a lot of things.
Well, but is it necessarily the things that we want to be hearing? Because if the true like revolution between crypto was to remove from the ability of the government to make soft money that they can stretch the supply of, is putting Bitcoin in a vault somewhere, and basing the United States dollar on not only gold but now Bitcoin, is that the future that we want?
Well, I mean, he didn't speak to that in this clip. So, yeah, the discussions about strategic reserve asset, we've talked about like what would that mean. I think Gene had a good take on that. Is that what we want? Well, I don't think you can control it. First off, like any nation state can do anything they want with Bitcoin. If they want to use it as a strategic reserve asset, if they want to back their currency with it, like that's the power of Bitcoin. Like anybody can do anything they want with it. It's no different than when we had the guys from Circuit DAO on here, and they said we want to create a collateralized stable coin on Chia. If the U.S. government wants to create a collateralized stable coin called the U.S. dollar and back it with Bitcoin, okay. I mean, they could do that if they wanted to. I don't know that they will, but I mean, they certainly could. It wouldn't stop them from doing it. It wouldn't stop anybody else from doing it. But in this clip, he doesn't really speak to that, and I don't think there was any new revelation about Bitcoin being a strategic reserve asset like that was discussed in his speech, or at least I haven't seen a clip that actually speaks to it. As far as like what he specifically says here, I think the interesting thing is he's courting crypto voters. He's specifically calling out to the 50 million people in the US who hold crypto assets and saying, I want your vote. I think that's new. That is absolutely the first time we've heard in an election cycle that sort of thing discussed in that openly, that way. I think that's pretty noteworthy. The other part is him saying self custody. It's saying I'm going to protect your right to that, and then I'm also going to ensure that at least throughout the course of my administration, we're not going to create a CBDC. Those are all strong statements about policy.
Well, and I do the one part that I do like is him embracing self custody. But also as politicians begin to understand things more, what are they going to do with that regard? I wish that he would address maybe regulation of exchanges. Maybe that was too much, but there's still a wide window of that we should be having expectations and having conversations about. But this whole anti-CBDC thing, if we're going to have the United States dollar, I'd sure prefer it to be digital and to be unable to manipulate the supply and the various classes of money. And a CBDC is the method of stopping that. So I hope that the understanding of the government's currency or the government's money begins to change, and also that we have politicians that say to us, you can have any number of monies and you can use those monies. We're not going to regulate the exchanges, and we're not going to try to pigeonhole your use into a currency that we put in the hands of large financial companies. Did you happen to see, by the way, Vivek Ramaswamy's the clip of Vivek talking earlier this year about expectations of Donald Trump being removed from contention?
I saw it. Yep.
Pretty damning, and seems like Vivek was right on the money.
We want to play that clip?
I don't know if you can pull it up, but would you play that? Because I think that maybe is the most important piece of a puzzle to begin to understand some of the very weird things that are going on this year, with the lack of the likes of the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Romneys and the other rhinos of the Republican Party that seem to be absent from this national convention. Paul Ryan also. Those people who have a very different international agenda all seem to be gone. And when I heard this from Vivek Ramaswamy, I thought, boy, Vivek is he's an all-star. Go ahead and play it.
Good to see you guys.
What did you mean on social media when you said that they're not going to, they're going to take Biden out and it's not going to be news?
Oh, this is a longer story. It takes a dark turn, but I think I have a good sense of what's going to happen here.
Okay.
They're leading into a trap. They're not going to let Trump get anywhere near the White House. They're not going to let him.
What about?
So the goal is, have him be the nominee, and by hell or high water, one way or another, they're not going to have him. They're not going to let him.
What about the other two though?
It's not them.
Who is it?
It's within our own party.
Okay. It's within our own party.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hey, look at the people who voted to keep Trump off the ballot. Who are they putting up? Who are lawsuits to keep him off the ballot? Larry Fink to Reid Hoffman. Who are they propping up? So it's a game. And I'm in this to make sure that doesn't happen. But they want it to be a two-horse race, eliminate him, put up actually the Trojan horse within the Republican Party that keeps the war machine humming and keeps the restrictions on speech and the censorship agenda. Get it done. Who needs Democrats when you can get it done through the Republican Party?
Okay.
So you do the math.
Okay.
You do the math on that. That's what's coming.
Hey, thanks again for taking
Think
my
about it.
question.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate your candor.
Thank you. Yeah.
Candor is right.
Okay, but wait a minute. Who's he talking about? Who's the Trojan horse that's backed by all these guys? Who did
Nikki
Ron Paul
Haley.
was? No, it's Vance, man. That's what Ron Paul said. I don't know, man. I think we got to look into that one more. But, I mean, you got Ron Paul and Rand Paul both basically saying, "Hey, wait a minute, who is this guy?"
No. JD Vance is backed by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has his dukes up with Reid Hoffman right now. No, I don't think
So you think the one Vivek is talking about is Nikki Haley? That was their Trojan horse.
100%. And that's why I was like gobsmacked to see Nikki Haley invited to speak, and absolutely terrified that was going to be the pick for vice president.
I'm still worried about Vance, man. It's like I'm still nervous. Like,
well, Vance seems to be anti-global war I mean, Trump promised no wars, but his violation of international sovereignty, especially with regards to Iran, worries me. So, and also his policies towards China, I'm all for the use of tariffs. That seems to be for 150 years in America a no-go area as we talk about globalism.
I'm eager to be proven wrong about Vance, and I'm not even going to say strongly. I'm just nervous. I'm nervous that this is not really the pick I'd expected for VP. Why is it not Vivek? I don't understand this. Why didn't he pick Vivek?
Because why not Vivek? Because of COVID, and because of Trump's COVID response, and because he wanted cover for saying it's going to be different in the future. And Vivek's ties to the pharmaceutical industry made that a no-go area with regards to Trump being I mean, I would say Trump fought agencies in the government and their expectations and desires for their response to the China whatever he said.
The China flu, I think
he said the China virus. But I know. My favorite part of the whole convention, by the way, was the priest that gave the benediction
it wasn't Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt off.
Oh God, no! That all of that stuff, whatever. But hey, we've got a guest on the show. We've thoroughly blackpilled ourselves now. Rusty, I don't know if you want to engage on any of our international or Republican conspiracy eyebrow raising, but if not, let's turn the talk to Colorado and cannabis.
All right, so we've got Ron with us. We have a chance to talk with somebody who's been boots on the ground with Colorado cannabis law and cannabis growing. So let's see if we can get the audio functioning. So Ron, I'm gonna unmute your mic here. I think we were able to hear you before, so hopefully everything's okay. You might have to do a quick lap round trip through, but here, I'm going to unmute your mic and see if it works. So, you want to say hi to us, Ron?
Yeah, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can totally hear you.
Oh, good. I just like to reiterate a little something, but I've listened to your conversation. Democrat Mendez, he was just busted for a bunch of felonies. I think if he was a Republican, he probably would have been picked as vice president. But anyway, you got any questions?
Well, we haven't been tracking the
Hello?
Sam Menendez, but that is we did talk yesterday about the
What happened here? Can you
Can
hear
you
me?
hear?
What happened?
Yeah, Ron, we
I
can
can't
hear
hear you guys.
How
Hello?
about now, Ron?
Ron, you might need
Did I
to.
say
You might
something
need
wrong?
to. No, you might need to do a lap and just come back to
Help?
get your audio back to working.
Hello?
Okay, so hopefully we can get Ron back.
You know, he does bring up a good point with Sam Menendez. We have not tracked Sam Menendez, and he was taking kickbacks, payments from. Oh no, I'm not even sure. It may have been Turkey or South Korea, but we did track Sun Yumi.
We talking about this Robert Menendez?
Bob
This dude?
Menendez.
This
Yes,
is the dude that took bribes and gold, right?
yeah, took bribes and gold from a developer in Florida.
And Turkey. I think there was something else that happened with Turkey. I don't
Well,
know.
you know, there's also been a politician in Texas, a state senator, I believe, who has recently discovered that he was being bribed by Azerbaijan or what's the Nagano conflict? Who is it between Azerbaijan and essentially Russia and Turkey? Um, but I think maybe there's a lot more personal gain that's at stake in those, and Bob Menendez has been um, I don't know, he's been he's been as
Well, it's different. It's different than what we talked about yesterday, like the dude getting the rug, and not actually like in our conversations about like crypto and rugging, but like actually taking a bribe of a rug. Here we've got Bob Menendez, and he's been found guilty, for accepting bribes of cash, gold, and he got better than a rug. He got a car too.
well. But remember, I maybe it was not on the show that I told you that I don't necessarily believe in quote unquote corruption when it comes to politics. The state is in control of money. It should like this notion that there should be rules about disclosure or whatnot to keep politicians' hands off certain aspects of government in the world. I think is setting ourselves up to be dealing with bad actors all the time, and so I'm actually more about disclosure than punishment with regards to this, and I think that telling politicians that they can't accept money is the wrong way. We should be forcing disclosure left and right, but that I don't know. I also don't believe that we should give the government the ability to stretch the monetary supply so that they can take advantage and hoodwink all of their voters. I think the political retribution, would be a lot more swift and vicious in a hard money world. Um, so
All right, should we see if we can get Ron back on stage? Let's take another swing at this. Let's see.
yeah, let's see if we can get it back
All right. All right, Ron, you should be back on.
Hello?
We can hear your audio, Ron. Can you hear me?
Am I back on?
Yes, and he's gone now.
No, we'll do some practicing with Ron. We gotta help him with his computer problem. So hopefully we can help get that sorted. So we'll take another crack at that on maybe next week. We'll see if we can't help him a bit. Lucas, I want to go back to CrowdStrike for a second. And the thing that I found very interesting about this situation, I was shockingly listening to NPR this morning, which I almost never do. I don't really like it as a news organization, but
I actually secretly had pegged you as a closeted NPR listener, so I'm glad for the admission.
So I it's just kind of like scrolling through the radio stations because I was having a discussion, and for whatever reason, we were just clicking through the dial, and usually I click through the presets, and then in disgust I'll shut it off and switch to something that I actually want to listen to. But they happened to be covering CrowdStrike, and I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to cover this. So I was listening to their coverage of it, and the only thing they talked about on NPR was that people were waiting in line at the airport, and that there were long lines at the airport. No mention of the fact that this was a global outage that was causing chaos everywhere. It was just like, oh yeah, there's long lines at the airport, and it's starting to get a little better, and people are getting on now. And they had a couple of puff pieces where they threw the mic in front of somebody who was like, yeah, I had to wait for half an hour. I had to wait for an hour. I was like, this is the worst journalism of all time. You have something that is of monumental importance to the entire planet, like causing chaos, and that's the best coverage you can possibly come up with. I mean, at the very least, they could have gone and read the quote from the CEO of Crowdstrike, which I'm actually going to throw it on the screen because this is important. It's like, how is the CEO actually, discussing this particular problem of, what his company has done here. And I think it's important, that like they had actually show it, right? But they didn't say anything. Here's the CEO, on X, talking about the particular issue that's going on here, right? He's saying it's not a security or cyber incident. It's just, we pushed a bad update. Right there. There's Falcon content right there.
Yeah, I read this earlier, and I don't necessarily believe it. This person has every reason to minimize what's going on here.
Well, let's look at their blog.
With regards to the focus also on aviation traffic, it's pandering to those people who are rather emotional. It's we're not seeing flights go down because the ticketing or the baggage systems are locked up. Um, but you get a bunch of people in a public space, and one of the few public spaces that we have left in the commercial world is our travel hubs, and people get very upset if they're going to be late, even though they
But
probably.
the reporting, Lucas, the reporting is the thing I'm lasering in on.
Well, I mean,
If
absolutely, I'm
if
agreeing
if
with you.
if you're just driving around in your car and you're trying to get up, the speed on what's going on, and you're not some ex-native that normally gets their news here, which honestly at this point I'm like, this is the only platform you can actually get the real scoop on what's going on. I mean, think about like how the Trump assassination was covered, right? But Trump falls down on stage, like whatever. It's like, no, multiple gunmen like were firing at the front runner for the presidency, and it looks like Secret Service either massive fail or potentially even worse, that this is some kind of an internal hit job on a presidential candidate. But nope, the mainstream media didn't report it that way, and now we've got a global IT outage, and NPR is covering it like it's just a problem with like checking your bags. Unbelievable, just shocking.
I want to coin a word, and I want to coin it and call it nice washing. Nice is an adjective that comes to us from the French court of Louis XV, and it means not telling people what you actually think. And I mean, this is part of the problem that we see with the other media sources. Like, tell us what you actually think. I don't.
Nice was a strong pejorative in France, right?
Yes,
Yeah, it did not have good connotations. It was very much frowned upon to call something nice.
yeah, absolutely. Um, there's a couple of other things, like going back to Trump's remarks also about Elizabeth Warren. The Winklevoss twins have donated 8 more Bitcoin each to the campaign of John Deaton.
How
And
does that work? How do you give that much to a single candidate? I didn't see a PAC mentioned again. What is this stupidness? Like, why do we even talk about this? Like, they can't give $1 million. They can't give 8 Bitcoin.
yeah, I mean, but can they? When it comes to crypto, can they?
Yeah, they can do anything they want, but when it comes down to it for the political candidate, they have to look at that and then they have to say, okay, but it's not a political donation. Like, I don't know if you want to make this a gift to me personally, but you can't use it for political purposes. Like,
Uh,
right?
well, going back to also the conversation about what the state can get away with regards to making rules about what we do with money. Crypto really calls that into question. When the government's in charge of the banks, and can can provide some sort of security or control over what gets deposited in a bank account. But in crypto, you can find somebody's wallet address and send them Bitcoin whether they want it or not.
You absolutely can. I'm not going on the technical aspects, but the way the law is written, and I guess maybe I'm just too used to thinking about the way that the rules are set up and that you actually have to follow them. Maybe I just need to stop thinking that way, because certainly you can. There's nothing stopping them, and they did. But if you recall, the money that was sent to Trump got returned. They said you can't give $1 million to us this way.
It's true, and maybe this is a plot by the Winklevoss twins to continually give the same $1 million to various candidates to draw attention to them and have it returned by the candidate who says it's against the rules.
That's what it feels like to me. It just feels like this is just them grabbing headlines and us just parroting this crap for no reason. It's like every time I see one of these, I'm like, okay, great, and it's just going to get returned, because a lot of these candidates don't want to get in a big fight with the Federal Election Commissions, which I think is the one who would enforce this and say you violated this law. Maybe there's no real teeth in that anymore, because I guess we don't follow the laws that are written and we don't care. But I don't know.
Well, there's not a lot of teeth in the FEC, and I mean we're living in a world where we begin to understand that whenever you put prosecution in the hands of somebody who is elected or appointed, then those people who get prosecuted can be chosen, and that system can be unfair. There's also, it could be that the Winklevoss, this could be a lack in precision with regards to the reporting, and they could be using the avenue of a political action committee that gets around some of that stickiness. And even when Citizens United happened and everybody was griping and moaning about it, I just said, well, this is people who thought about what the government can and cannot actually do and control, thinking about the future, and how very hard it is to fairly say, like, you can't give this person money, because it's long been going on, as we see with Bob Menendez, that you can put gold in a cake and take a cake to a birthday party and leave it there for the children and cut one end off the cake, and then Bob Menendez and his wife take the cake home and look in the rest of the cake, and lo and behold, there's a gold bar. So I don't know if that's how it's done. That's how I would do it. I also put because I don't want to dwell too much on the Winklevoss twins. I just think it interesting that John Deaton is getting some notice and support, and Elizabeth Warren also on the other end getting I don't know, the disdain and the concern of Donald Trump, as he mentioned her specifically in his speech, especially with regards to crypto.
Well, wait, let's stick on this Winklevoss thing for just a second. So they grab headlines for giving $1 million, and then bam, it goes back, right? They were refunded their $1 million because they exceeded the, I don't even know what this number is. Where does this come from? If I go look at federal contribution election limits, I don't get it. Like, where is this $844,000? What does this even mean? Like, I don't see this anywhere on here.
I don't know. I didn't. I thought the limit was $5,000.
Right there, you're completely right. $5,000.
It might be with regards to corporations, or LLCs or other incorporated entities.
I mean, this table makes it pretty clear. Like, I don't know what this is talking about. They could do unlimited transfers to this stuff, like party committee, district local, party committee national. If they want to do that, they could donate $1 million to the RNC. It looks like.
I don't know. Well, but is this for personal? Like, scroll up a little. Is this for personal donations?
Well, look, it says this is the recipient and this is the donor. So if you're an individual donor, right, then we're on this line, and this is how much you can give per each thing.
Well, but I don't see corporations or incorporated entities listed over there on the left.
I'm pretty sure that a corporation, according to Citizens United, falls right here as an individual.
Well, that's what I was just wondering about that. So Who knows? Who knows? Maybe the Winklevoss are just playing a PR game and sending money that gets returned to them because they want to draw attention. Oh, did you name attention to a candidate and name it and attention to themselves? I'm not sure. And maybe we're stooges for talking about it, but to me, it's also that if the money actually makes it is less of a. I mean, in the world today, where did all that money get spent before? It got spent on marketing and advertising and robocalls. In the world of today, perhaps the tweet that goes out and goes viral that the money was sent is a cheaper a cheaper version of that, and that's what the system that they're playing. But Donald Trump also openly, and I already saw some insipid misconstruence of what he said, but he jokingly said, "I'm here to buy your votes. I'm here to buy your votes." In his speech yesterday, did you catch that?
No, who said that?
Donald Trump.
I'm here to buy your votes.
Yeah, he said, I'm buying your votes. And I mean, like I talk about what we're going to see with political candidates too, and that is at some point I would imagine we see, if not the candidate level, the party level, using the political parties as a redistribution of political contributions, which also sounds like a church. And that to me will be the real politify movement. Dustin and I have talked about this politify movement. Whenever tokens are not used, or crypto blockchain ecosystems are not used just for the mimetic value and value speculation, trading speculation, but using that as an isolated ecosystem where you send money to a candidate and that candidate redistributes the money to his voting base or her base.
Did you see the grassroots movement to report on 501c3 violations of endorsing political candidates? Did you catch that effort that was going on?
Again, a massive problem, and because sure, they want to do that, like and this is why the Johnson Amendment needs to be repealed. Because
we got to pull that up. You're giving us something here. Johnson Amendment.
The Johnson Amendment with regard, and Johnson as in Lyndon Baines Johnson, president after Kennedy, and in the wake of the civil rights legislation of 1964, 65, bound the mouths and the tongues of the pastors and preachers on the pulpits of America, and said that this was largely targeted towards churches, and said if you're not paying taxes, then you don't get free speech. So, and everyone should be guaranteed free speech. And because part of the problem that you come to here is, number one, it's never been, or if it has been applied, it's only one or two cases since the invocation of this legislation, and secondly, pastors and preachers and 501(c)(3)s, like those should be the places to have political speech.
Wait a minute. A 501(c) is a special distinction that was granted. It's like a special dispensation from the Pope to not have to play by the same rules as everybody else.
Well, it's a tax, but it's a tax. It's a tax exception.
And yes, it's part of the USC. It's part of the code.
Well, and it's saying if you're not seeking if you're not looking to make money, then you get some tax breaks. Well, that's churches.
Yep. And I know that there's a lot of churches that say we're not willing to be under the thumb of the federal government in this way. I know there's like a mass movement against it, which actually, that's another thing. We haven't even covered that there's been a call for a national revival. Like, I really wanted to ask you about that. When was the last time you heard the word revival mentioned in national politics?
Yeah, I heard it in the Republican National Convention. I forget who said that this is a revival, but that's exactly what they did say.
Well, no,
Um,
but give us that historical, Lucas, because I mean, there have been revivals in the U.S. many times, right? This is not a new thing, but it is definitely something that hasn't happened. Gosh, it's got to be at least 70 years since there's been one, maybe 100, right?
well, I would say that the revivals happen whenever we come to this issue of the of and I guess if we're going to talk revivals, then put up millenarianism, which is what gives us. I talk about the progressives and the populist movements. They are part and part in a religious movement that we call millenarianism, and that is these religions that talk about the end of the world being so close at hand and it being very important to um, the Second Great Awakening.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this is what I get a little longer ago than I had thought, but I thought there was another one that happened.
well, look at what that leads into.
Yeah,
1800.
look, here's one, like 1850 to 1900.
Okay, but so go back to the timelines of those. What is the Second Great Awakening leading into? Civil War. And so what you were seeing then were religious disagreements within churches as to what the policy response to slavery in America should be.
Well, right. It's so there. So the revival presupposes like a massive change in like the way that the general operation of the laity, right? Like we're talking about a political shift, like presaged by the churches, and for whatever reason, it seems like we're potentially on the cusp of this again, right?
Well, you've heard me also talk about like money is an act of faith. Money is religious. And as we are confronted with technologies that give us a new understanding of how to use and interact with money, that is also going to reverberate through our understanding about our conversation and relationship with God and other people. And because like go to the third great awakening. What happens with the third great awakening? Or what's the timeline of the third great awakening? Like here we are in the second great awakening, and we come to a reliance on fiat currency, or very like the ability for the government to stretch money, and a gradual acceptance of that as being the policy initiative to also accommodate the introduction of a class of people who were not previously economically voiced, the enslaved people. And Salmon P. Chase, who was the creator of the national banking system and the soft money that it was set up to do, says explicitly that is the reason why. He said, but we both have to pay the military, but we're going to have a massive group of people who have not been represented in the United States before, and we're going to need a monetary system that we can manipulate in order to create space for them, because it's either that or going and taking more land from people, and they'd already taken a lot in the West. So the third great awakening, look at the timeline on the third great awakening, because you see that is whenever we turn that monetary system out on the rest of the world. I don't see you scrolling down there. And now you really,
I was looking for backing up some of what we were just talking about here as far as the revival and like this being discussed, because I've seen it, but I was looking for something that had a bit more
you know,
legs on it.
well, it's also like think about this, like Fry's Rebellion. I don't know if you can pull up Fry's Rebellion, Fries Rebellion. But think about John Adams saying, leading into the Revolutionary War, those damn Quakers, they're pacifists, they won't fight. And by the way, Solomon P. Chase is a Quaker. And then you come to Fry's Rebellion after the Revolutionary War, and it's farmers, it's German farmers in Pennsylvania, and they say, we fought in the Revolutionary War, and we're not paying taxes levied by these Quakers who didn't fight in the war. So, you know, like we talk a lot about federalism, or I talk a lot about federalists versus Democratic Republicans, and this the the change into the progressive movements as we change the monetary system, and the populist movement. But going like behind that is the tapestry of religion, and then think to the history of the Mormon religion in America, because that is also a fascinating, that is a fascinating reverberation of the same. Who are, or where does the Mormon religion come from? It comes from New England, and it is former Puritans who have been in the United States for many years, and they are looking to get out from the under the thumb of the federal system, and they constantly end up moving west in order to have their religious nation state, as promised by maybe before constitutional or early understandings of the Constitution, that the different states would have control of their religion. And fast forward to them moving all the way out to Utah, lands in the West, before the federal government has reached their hand that far, and the creation of the Mormon state in the land of Utah.
How's this one? Is this kind of what you're talking about? Mormonism and the Puritan connection, this kind of thing?
Sure. I mean, I would say maybe just bring up the Wikipedia article on the Mormon uprising in Utah. Skip to that. I mean, if people want to debate me on Mormonism and the Puritan connection, I think it's generally accepted by the Mormon Church and every and other historians, especially like where it was coming from, and that it was piggybacking on some of those religious concepts in New England.
This one?
Yeah, probably the Mormon War, the Mormon Rebellion. So this
Cannon's blunder.
Oh well, let's not get in too much into that. But
all right.
I think what interests me is, you know, like Colorado. The Colorado had a militia. Many states had militias at the time. When the Mormon uprising occurred in what would become now the state of Utah, or as they called it then, Mormon territory, other states and Americans went to fight them on that. And I was reading a history of the Texas Plains and Colorado recently, and I shocked that there was the history brought up the ranch of, I want to say Chesworth. I could look it up really quickly, but one of the commanders of the Colorado militia was a Canadian, a man from Canada. And so, just like in Fry's Rebellion, that you could have people who didn't fight in the war but had come to America and gained political power. Here in Colorado, you had people who came to the United States from Canada, and there were several of them. I mean, even Melvin Mills, who is a character in New Mexico history and Colorado history I know a lot about. Melvin was from Canada also. But even prior to being from Canada, his family had lived in Boston and had fled the United States in the argument over slavery, going back to those, and that was in 1843, going back to the Second Great Awakening and the arguments that were occurring in churches over slavery. And so you had some people move to Canada in protest. The long story short, you know, the one of the leaders of the Colorado militia is a man from Colorado. And like even as we had this conversation today in the Republican and Democratic parties over who has a right to be an American, uh, that's a long story, and uh, it's interesting that the people who were leading the Colorado militia were not from the United States, and certainly hadn't been in the United States as long as many members of the Mormon Church. But even that, like, not all Mormons were from New England. There were many from Europe who were adopting the religion and coming over um, for the promise of Western lands. But
Well, as so it took a little different turn that I thought we'd talk about. So I mean, this is always fascinating to hear about these types of topics, and especially the historical perspective. But like, why did you go there from what I had mentioned about like there being statements about this being tied to a revival? Like, because I've seen this. Like, I tried to pull up a good link, and I'll try and grab a better one for later because I was just like not finding the one that I wanted to pull up. But like, I've seen this actually stated like several times that like this political movement and what's going on with Trump is being tied to this, especially with some people starting to say, well, this was divine intervention. Trump was supposed to be assassinated. Some people saying that this, him gloriously being saved by, getting shot, was the hand of God. I've seen a lot of this actually being said. It's shocking, honestly, and tied to the word revival.
well, I
Why
would.
does that? What does that have to do with Mormons? Like, why are we going there?
Well, because the relationship of religion and the states versus the federal government, like, is at the very heart of the question of America.
Right, it's happened before, and I'm saying that like this. I'm noting that we've had these revivals have occurred. I don't think they're necessarily within the public idea, right, from recently, because it's been a while since there's been one. But this talk that we're in one right now is,
Well,
it's significant, I think.
I mean, the Republican Party has long been like courting various aspects of religion. You had the Christian conservatives, the moral majority, et cetera, et cetera. But what I think, where I think they align, is this notion of of the states and moreover religious communities having the ability to control the majority of their rules, and having like having their utopian areas, like going and finding land and finding people that align with your values, and I mean, look at the movement on the question of abortion with regards to Republican Party and the planks there today. The Democrats want like the federal government to be the arbiter of moral authority. If not the federal government, then the Supreme Court justices. That's where they see it, and they think, well, federal government should be making all the rules, and that's sort of the federalist position. But then you get to the Democratic Republican, or Republican positions, and they said no. To have like one great system like that is moving backwards into the past. We should have the a more complex political system that is tiered, and where you have religious areas, religious communities that are states where that people can move into and get to declare what the rules are according to their religions. And that the way to bridge these religious communities so they're not fighting is to both guarantee movement and to guarantee commerce between them. And I would say that was one of the more original understandings of how the Articles of Confederation and later the Constitution should work.
All right, maybe we can talk about this more as we set up later. But I'm not sure if we're connecting the dots in the same way that I thought we we might discuss this particular topic. I hear you on what you're saying. It just seems like not related to what I was trying to bring up with respect to, the calls that this is a revival, and like what that might mean, especially with people that would sweep this into a political movement. That's I think significant, but we may
Well,
have to.
what are so maybe like cut to the chase. What do you see? What do you see here? Because I,
Well, when I say revival, right, it usually means like a renewed spiritual fervor, especially with respect to the Christian religion. That's what these are. This is a Christian revival. That's what these are. So it's saying we want to go back to the way things have been traditionally rooted in Christian morality. And that means that there's usually a political will associated with it for dramatic social change. That is usually what is meant by revival. So when those words are said, and if there's a massive amount of people who are attaching themselves to that kind of idea, which I'm seeing in the RNC, and I'm seeing within the way that Trump is starting to talk about himself and what has occurred and the way that he was saved and that this was a miracle and that people have witnessed this. And the eyewitnesses there say that, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, I saw an angel protect, Trump. These things are all language that's used when, this type of thing occurs. And so it's happened in the past where this mass movement of people decide they want to re-embrace Christianity in a way that has a particular meaning. And if this is occurring, it's significant and political in nature, as well as like tied to spirituality of the people that think they're participating in it or that are participating in it.
well, again, I think the real where the rubber meets the road, or the gears grind together with regards to religion, is actually our understandings of debt and debt forgiveness and concepts about money.
Well, and that is usually tied with some of this as it being tr happening within a jubilee. Like that's also frequently tied with these, and that's why, sometimes you'll see that these revivals happen on like some 50-year cycles.
Well, and maybe I'll leave it with this, because there's also this talk of tyranny. Cicero says that a tyrant is the forgiver of debts. And what a thing for a Roman, a citizen, somebody who's been elected to a position, to declare themselves without checking in with the republic or the democracy as to whether they can be the forgiver of debts. But I think the conversation of religion, where strongest, is one that is a conversation about forgiveness. So and we also stare in the face at $34 trillion of 34 trillions of dollars that we have taken from not only the rest of the world but our future generations. So perhaps we need to forgive ourselves.
I wouldn't be shocked if that's couched in that language, and that's how we achieve some kind of a reset on currency. I also see the rumblings in that direction. We've talked about, what president is actually going to have to preside over this situation. I'm contending that it's likely to be the next one. So if this is the political environment and framework under which, Donald Trump is taking office, and they're couching it in terms of a revival and calling for, a different way to think about U.S. monetary policy, that I wouldn't be surprised at all if these things are tied together.
Well, and I've also said repeatedly that that part of the answer is going to be a debt fight between the states and the federal government. And perhaps this Christian revival is laying the groundwork of the movement to give politicians the language uh, to say, like, who has the control and who has the blame to become a tyrant and forgive debts. But we're over the hour. Let's it's Friday, and let's close it up, and we'll pick up next week.
All right, we'll see you then.
One more thing, as I
Oh,
say that, one more thing. I don't know if you saw that Evan Gershkovich, reporter for the Washington Post, has been sentenced and tried in Russia. I wanted to get
I caught that.
you did. Okay, keep that on your radar too. I think that is going to have some ripples of impact also.
Yeah, and I saw that they were already talking about who they wanted to trade him for. That there's a prisoner in Germany that Russia wants, and they said, "We want this guy. If you want your Washington Post correspondent back, then we want our guy released from Germany."
Yep. Well, who knows what happens there? All right. See you.
Yeah.